Okay, all right. So today in this session, I'll be teaching you exception handling.
Mm-hmm.
And before I start, I just would like to know like what do you think about exception handling and what is your understanding about it, so that I can start as per your understanding.
Uh, yeah, so basically, when like before also, when you're normally coding back in college, we never used to use exception handling. Once I've come to office and all of that, I started using it. It's mostly used within the try catch system, and I do not actually know too much about exception handling other than the maybe null pointer exception or uh, if like an exception E and then I put print a message, not much in detail. This is actually all I kind of know about exception handling.
Okay, all right. So, yeah, whatever you said is correct, but the thing which you said is the how we handle the exception. But what is exactly exception handling means? So
Okay.
you mentioned about try catch and other things. That is the way we handle the exception in the code. But
Mm-hmm.
what is exactly exception handling? So why do we need this exception handling when you make any project or wherever you work? You will be using on day-to-day basis this exception
Mm-hmm.
handling.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, this is a very powerful mechanism that Java provides us so that we can handle the runtime errors,
Mm-hmm.
and it helps us to make our flow of the application is maintained, because when we run any program, right, it runs line by line, and in
Mm-hmm.
let's say something happens in one of the line
Mm-hmm.
and it gets terminated at that point of time, because every time when you run any program, it runs the program line by line. Let's say I have 100 lines of program and
Mm-hmm.
I get some error at the line number 50,
Mm-hmm.
so my program will not proceed after that,
Mm-hmm.
because the flow is terminated there because of some error happened in the program, and my program got stuck at that point of time.
Mm-hmm.
So we want that if there is any error or there is something that needs happen which will terminate my program or it will hinder the flow of the program, so we have the exception handling. We handle the exception so that the flow of the program is not hindered.
Mm-hmm.
Although there is a error, but since I have handled it properly, it will not affect the flow of the program.
Mm-hmm.
It will continue running. My program will continue running till the end of the program.
Mm-hmm.
So this helps us to make the flow of the program proper. So that is
Okay.
what exception handling means. So by definition, you can always go and find out on the internet on in detail. But in layman language, it helps us to maintain the flow of our program.
Mm. Okay.
So this is exception handling, and in Java, right, we have some hierarchy of classes that is already built in, and we follow that.
Okay.
So this is the hierarchy which you are seeing on my screen.
Okay.
So the highest is throwable,
Okay.
and below throwable we have exception and error. There are two.
Okay.
One is exception, one is error.
Mm. Okay.
With
Mm-hmm.
and within the exception, again you have different type of exception. We call it runtime exception.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have heard about this exception which you are seeing on my screen: SQL
Mm-hmm.
injection, IO
Mm-hmm.
exception, arithmetic
Mm-hmm.
exception, null pointer exception.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the different type of exception under the exception, and then
Mm-hmm.
under the error we have stack overflow error, virtual machine error, out of memory error.
Mm.
So these two categories we have in under the throwable. One comes under error, one comes under exception. So
Mm.
this stack overflow error you might have heard sometimes, like we have a stack memory, right, memory is
Mm.
full, that time
Mm.
you get this error, stack overflow error, or out of
Mm.
memory error. Let's say in your machine you have some 4 GB of memory,
Hmm.
and that is completely full,
Hmm.
and you are trying to store something else, in that case
Hmm.
you will get out of memory error. So
Yes. Yes.
those are errors, but
Okay.
exception happens in the program. As you
Okay.
also mentioned, null pointer exception. So null
Hmm.
pointer exception is a runtime exception.
Okay. Okay.
So whenever you have any null value in any of the variable or wherever you are getting null, and then you will get this null pointer exception. Actually, these are built-in exception: arithmetic exception, index out of bond exception, under index out of bond exception. Also, you have two exception. One is
Okay.
array index out of bond exception, string index out of bond exception. So these are some of the exception which are already built in by Java. We use in the
Okay.
program.
Okay. So these classes come under exception class, or they have their individual classes like arithmetic exception class or null point exception class?
So these are the exception is the parent class of these exceptions.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So see, IO exception, SQL exception, class not exception, runtime exception is under exception,
Okay.
and
So these
these,
also are individual classes.
yes, these are also individual classes,
Okay.
but parent class is exception. And for this arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, number format exception, index out of bond exception, parent is runtime exception.
Okay.
So
Got
like
it.
these are like parent and child, and it is under their class. So these two, array index out of bond and string out of bond, is under index out of bond exception.
Got
So
it.
this is the flow. So if you have this flow in your mind, at least you will be able to understand like which is the parent class.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
on the top it is the throwable, below top with, I mean below throwable we have exception and error, and under exception we have this exception, the runtime exception we have this, and below error we have this stack overflow, virtual machine error, and out of
Hmm.
memory error.
Hmm.
So this is the hierarchy of the exception classes.
Okay.
Now we'll see like what are the type of exceptions. Now
Okay.
I told you about the hierarchy of the exception and what is exception handling means. Now
Hmm.
next I'll be discussing about the type of exception.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So there are mainly three type of exceptions. One is checked exception, unchecked exception, and error.
Hmm.
So I also discussed about error in the previous slides, right? Those are the
Hmm.
error like stack overflow, out of memory error. Those are the error. But here I
Hmm.
will discuss more about checked exception and unchecked exception.
Okay.
So checked exception is something which can be checked at compile time.
Okay.
So what do you mean by compile time? Compile time means you have not run the program, but
Hmm.
you are in a stage of when you write something
Compilation.
in any of the editor, right? And it is not compiling. I mean,
Hmm.
it will throw some error.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if the exception is having at that point of time when you are compiling your program, then
Hmm.
it is a checked exception
Okay.
that I'll discuss in detail. So these exceptions, right? IO exception, SQL exception, parse exception are example of the checked exception.
Okay.
So this
Okay.
will happen when you actually do the code, and if there is any issue in your code, this will show, this exception will show you the error at the time of compiling only, because your program will not compile, so you will not able to run the your you will not be able to run your program successfully.
Okay. Okay.
So that is checked exception. Now let's come to the unchecked exception. So unchecked exception are nothing but it is runtime exception.
Okay.
So you will not be able to know this exception at compile time unless you run
Hmm.
the program.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
to know the unchecked exception, you have to run the program, because this will be checked at runtime, not the compile time.
Okay.
So this null pointer exception, array index out of bond exception, arithmetic exception are example of runtime or unchecked exception, because this null pointer exception you will not be able to know when your program is compiling.
Hmm. Hmm.
You will only be able to know when your program has run.
Okay, got it.
So that is unchecked exception. Error is the another one that happens when you have like stack memory is full or your memory in your system is full.
Hmm.
So error represent exceptional conditions that are not expected to be caught under normal circumstances.
Hmm.
They are typically caused by issue outside the control of the application. So
Hmm.
this is
Hmm.
not in your control, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because such
Hmm.
as system failure or resource exhausted.
Hmm.
When
Hmm.
your resource is exhausted in your system or your
Hmm.
system is failed, at some
Hmm.
point of time this error happens.
Hmm.
So this is error. So these are the type of exception in Java that are categorized into these three category. One is checked, unchecked, and errors.
Hmm. Hmm.
So now let's move to next. Now we'll see like what are the keywords that we use in order to handle the exception in Java.
Okay.
So these are the keywords that are used. So as you already know about try and catch, finally, throw and throws. So these are the five keywords that are used for handling the exception in Java,
Hmm.
and every keyword has some specific reason to be used.
Hmm.
So try catch we use. Try is the keyword that is used to specify the block where you should place an exception code. Let's say
Hmm.
I know like this piece of code which I am writing will have some exception. So
Hmm.
that piece of code has to be written within the try block.
Okay.
And catch is the keyword that is used to handle the exception.
Okay.
And catch has to be preceded by try block. Like you cannot only use the catch.
Hmm.
So you there has to be try in order to use the catch block.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And then finally is another block that is used to execute the necessary code of the program. So let's say there is a piece of code that you want to be executed whether the exception happens or not.
Hmm.
If exception happens, then also it should get executed. If it does not happen, then also it should get executed. So
Hmm.
those type of code we generally write in the finally block.
Okay.
So finally
Okay.
block will always be executed.
Okay. Regardless whether there is an exception or not.
Yes, but
Okay.
there is a few cases in which it will not execute, but that those are like one or two cases,
Hmm.
but in most of the cases it will execute.
Okay.
And next is throw keyword. So that is used to throw an exception in the code. So
Hmm.
sometimes you want to throw the exception, right? So in that case you will have to be use this throw keyword.
Okay.
And the last one is throws. So throws is
Okay.
the another keyword that is used to declare the exception.
Okay.
So it says that there may occur an exception in the method,
Okay.
and you are not throwing an exception, but it is used with the method signature. So on the method level, right, you can use this throws keyword to declare
Hmm.
the particular exception.
Okay. So it's like a custom exception or
No, I'll just show you.
okay.
Custom exception is a different that I
Okay.
will discuss later part of the video. But
Okay.
throws like when you don't use this try catch, but you want like this piece of code will throw the exception, right? In that case, what you can do is you can declare that exception at the method level.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it will handle that exception that we
Hmm.
will see in the example.
Hmm. Hmm.
So this is about the how we what are the keywords that we use in order to handle the exception. So now let's discuss about it in exams. So here you see like I have already discussed about the theory. Now let's see like what is exception and how do we handle it.
Okay.
Then we'll discuss about the custom exception and other things.
Okay.
So first I will discuss about exception, right? So let's say here is a small piece of code that I have written, and I want to handle the exception. So I have a int variable called data,
Mm-hmm.
and this data
Divided by
is
0.
100 divided by 0.
Mm.
And before I do this, let me remove this exception
Okay.
so that you understand better. Now I have written a, just make it int, and I
And print
want to
data.
print the data.
Okay.
So let me run this program.
Mm.
So this is printing 100.
Yes.
Okay, so this is running fine because the piece of code which I have written,
Worked.
it will not throw any exception, so it is working fine.
Mm.
But now let's, I made some modification in my code, and I am dividing this data value with 0. So
Okay.
we know, right, we cannot divide a number with 0.
Mm. Mm.
So there
Correct.
is a chance that it will throw a exception, my program will not run properly.
Mm. Mm.
So if I execute now, now you see I am not
Exception.
getting that data value because my program got terminated at some point of time when it was getting executed. So
Yes.
this
Got it.
line of code is not executed at all.
Mm. Mm.
But I want to handle this.
Mm.
This line of code has to be executed when there is a exception also.
Okay.
So in order to make the flow of the program, we need to handle the exception where we feel that this can throw an exception.
Mm-hmm.
So now what I will do, I'll use this try catch,
Mm.
and we know like this piece of code is supposed to throw the exception.
Yes.
So we'll handle this exception.
Mm.
And if you want to print something, you can print it here.
Okay.
And just remove this. So now you see if I run the program, since I know like there is a exception here,
Mm.
still this line of code will be executed
Mm.
because
Mm.
I have handled the exception. If exception occurs here, this will come to this block.
Mm. Got it.
Let me run the program. So here you see I am able to get the both the statement
It does
because
not interrupt that flow.
it does not interrupt the flow of the program, and
Mm.
it, when there is a exception, I am handling it, it will come to exception block like catch block. So I am able to see line of this line of is also printed on the console, and
Mm.
this line is also printed on the console.
Mm-hmm.
So both the lines which are there in the catch block and outside the catch block is printed on the console. So this is how exception helps us to handle the flow of the program. So if you
Got it.
handle the exception properly, your program will not interrupt in between, and the flow of the program will be
Mm.
proper.
Got it.
So this is how we handle the exception. This was just one small exception which I showed you here, but
Mm.
there are many exceptions that you can handle. But
Mm.
the keyword and the way we handle exception will remain the same. Only
Got it.
the type of exception will change. Here, since this exception was called arithmetic exception, so I handled this. Later
Mm.
on, you might have some different exception like null pointer exception, IO
Mm.
exception, SQL exception, or any custom exception you want to throw.
Yeah.
So you can just change the name of the exception, but the
Okay.
way we handle the exception will remain the same.
Okay. I have one question. So, if, for example, there is a piece of code and I do not know what kind of exception might be thrown, so in that case, like here, can I just write exception E?
Yes, you can do that. So let's say if you make it exception also, it will run as expected. It will
Okay.
not throw any error because I told you in the when I was discussing this hierarchy, right? Exception is
Hmm.
the parent class
Okay.
of all the exceptions.
Then why don't we just write exception E? Why do we have to specify what kind of exception while coding?
Yes, that is why we should always handle the specific exception. We should not handle the generic exception.
Okay,
So
okay,
this
okay.
is what it is generic. Here any exception happens, this code will run, irrespective of what exception is thrown.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Because exception is the parent class and it can handle any exception in any of the program. It does not matter whether it is a arithmetic exception or it is a IO exception or SQL exception.
Okay, okay,
But it
got
is
it.
recommended to handle the specific exception in your code.
Okay, okay, got
So
it.
always try to handle the specific exception so that it is better to know, like you exactly know which exception is thrown. Here you won't know if I don't print this.
That it is arithmetic exception.
So you won't know like which exception was caught,
Got it.
right? But if I make it arithmetic,
Hmm,
you can see that it will shows that arithmetic exception will be thrown because this is
hmm,
very specific.
got it.
So you can print here, like you will have this E object, right? You will have so
Hmm,
many parameter under E.
hmm,
So you can get to know the detail of which exception is thrown, get
hmm.
message, or you can print something else. So you will get that object.
Okay,
So
okay.
here you
Oh,
see I am able to see that arithmetic exception is thrown.
okay, okay,
So that is why we always, or it is recommended also to handle the specific exception in your code so that you
okay.
know like at which point of time which exception is thrown rather than
Got it.
handling the generic exception.
Understood.
And one more thing I will explain you here, and this is very important also. Many Java developer even don't know कि this happens in exception. You can have more than one catch block, there is no issue,
Okay.
and you can handle exception here E. Any other exception. Okay.
Oh, okay. So if arithmetic is caught, that will be printed separately, and if any other exception also apart from arithmetic happens, then it will catch in the second time.
Yes. So in your case you are telling, right, कि why can't we handle this with the exception class?
Yeah.
So you can definitely do like this.
Okay.
So now see what happens if there is a arithmetic exception, it will come to this block.
Hmm.
But if there is anything else
Hmm.
other than arithmetic exception, it
Hmm.
will come to this block.
Okay. Okay. Got
So
it.
let me run this program. Here you see this block is not printed
Uh-huh.
because this piece of code is not executed because the exception which I have handled is very specific. So this came to this catch block.
Got it.
But if you are not sure, like there is a chance that other than arithmetic exception can be thrown, you can handle like this.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
But if you know like what exception will be thrown, you should always handle with the specific exception. You can
Specific.
have multiple catch block. Here you can have one more catch block if you want. There
Got it.
is no
Understood.
issue.
Hmm.
So you can handle with multiple catch block.
Got it.
But here one catch is here is the way I have written this piece of code is completely fine and it is working. But you
Hmm.
cannot write like this.
Okay. Specific one should be first.
Yes.
After that, it should be.
So this question is asked in the interview. You should be very clear. कि
Oh, it's
what?
showing error.
Because you cannot ask. This is compile time error. That is what I was telling, right? Your program is not compiling.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
this is not recommended. Many people don't know about this, and this question may ask in the interview. Many times this question is asked like, what will be the hierarchy of the exception when you handle it? Can we handle the generic and then a specific, or it has to be a
Hmm.
specific and then generic? So it
Okay,
always has to be a specific first and then generic,
okay, okay.
because
Oh, this is.
you think logically also.
Hmm.
Since this is the parent class, this block
Hmm.
of code will not be executed any time if it
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
not throwing error also,
Hmm.
because always it will come to this catch block. So this catch block is useless here.
Hmm. Got it.
So it has to be always a specific first and then generic last.
Got it. Got it.
So this is all about try catch and exception I talked about. Now
Hmm.
let's talk about finally block.
Hmm.
So I said that finally block is something which will always be executed whether the exception happens or not.
Hmm. Hmm.
So let's say you can add this finally block also.
Hmm.
So now let's see, when I run this piece of code is getting executed or not.
Okay. It will always be executed.
Yes, so see, I'm able to get this message on in my console, because although there is an exception here, this piece of code will be always executed. You can see that this line is not getting printed in my console, because
Okay.
that catch block is not getting executed.
Okay. Okay. So I have a question. If there is no exception caught, then finally block is not executed.
No, it will be executed. So let's say now I'll just
Yeah, maybe 100. Huh.
100. Now let me run this program. So now
It
you
will
see,
always.
now this piece of code which was getting printed earlier is not getting printed because there is no exception. So
Hmm.
these two catch block which I have handled the exception is not getting printed, but finally block is getting printed.
Still executed. Okay. Okay.
So
Got it.
finally block is something, whether the exception occurs or it does
Hmm.
not occur, it will always be printed. So the piece of code which is under this finally block will be always executed.
Okay.
This will only be not executed. There is a scenario called you can manually exit the program, system.exit.
Okay. Okay.
If you do that, it will terminate the program itself. In that scenario, it will not execute. Otherwise, with the program perspective, it will always be executed.
Got it.
So, this is about try, catch, and finally block.
Okay.
So I hope that this till now you are clear about all the concept what I have discussed so far,
Yes, I've written it down. Yeah, I'm clear.
and some of the questions also which I have discussed. Those questions you can always note down, because those are very important from the interview point of view. Also, the one which I explained
Yes.
about the hierarchy of the exception.
Yes, I
So
have made a note.
yes. So now we'll discuss about the further concept. So we have another like custom exception and throws, right? So
Hmm.
let me go back to slide. So now let's discuss about the custom exception. So what is custom exception? Because many times you want to have your own exception, right? Or it may be like the exception you are trying to handle
Hmm.
is not suitable, or it does not have a specific message which you want to uh, return back to the users,
Hmm.
or it is not a built-in exception, because there are so many exceptions which are already built in. Let's say we have null pointer exception, arithmetic exception. These are the built-in classes which Java provides.
Hmm. Hmm.
But let's say tomorrow I am trying to get the user data in the database,
Hmm.
and there is a chance that the user is not present in the database, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I want to throw that user not found exception.
Okay.
and this
Hmm.
is not a built-in class in the Java.
Correct.
But for me to show the error message to the client or to the user, whoever is trying to get that user detail, I
Hmm.
want to show like it should show that user is not found in the database with particular ID.
Got it. Hmm.
So for that I want to write a custom exception.
Hmm.
So Java also gives you flexibility to handle your custom exception. You can make your own class, you can write meaningful messages to the custom exception and you can throw it.
Okay.
So custom exception helps us to represent your specific errors,
Hmm.
and it improves your code readability because you can make your own exception as per your needs, as
Hmm.
one
Hmm.
example which I gave you, the user not found exception.
Hmm.
So when user is not found, you will not say like exception is thrown like generic exception, right? So
Hmm.
at the client side they will not understand like what happened.
Correct.
So to have the meaningful message, we have a custom exception so that we can make our own classes and we can send a meaningful message to the client so that they understand actually what happened in the backend side of it.
Got it.
So to make your custom exception, we use either you can use exception class or you can
Mm-hmm.
use runtime exception. Both classes you can use. So
Okay.
mainly we use exception for the checked exception and runtime exception for the unchecked exception.
Okay. Once again, I'll make that note down. Checked and runtime exception for unchecked.
Yes.
Okay.
But most of the time in your scenario you will be using runtime exception because most of the time we handle exception is that is runtime exception only. But
Hmm.
sometimes people ask this also, why do we always use runtime exception when we have custom exception? Why can't we use exception? You can use both,
Hmm.
but most of the time you will find that people use runtime exception.
Got it.
So this is about custom exception.
Okay.
And let's discuss about custom exception now. So before I discuss about custom exception, I'll discuss about runtime exception also, because runtime exception will be used to create that custom exception.
Hmm. Hmm.
So null pointer exception is a runtime exception, you know, right?
Yes. Not bad. Aha.
And I also discussed that this is unchecked exception. So
Yes. Hmm.
unchecked exception means it will be not caught at compile time. So you can see that my program is compiled.
Got it.
I'm not able to see any error.
Got it. Got it.
But when I run this program, I'll see
Hmm.
that there is a null pointer exception is thrown.
Okay. Hmm.
So let me execute this program, and here you see it is saying that null reference encountered,
Okay.
because that is the message which I have printed. But
Hmm.
if you print here the exception, it will
E
throw
dot get message.
null pointer exception. So here you can see that it is also telling that where is it is null. So it is telling that you are trying to find this string dot length because str is null. So it is throwing null pointer exception.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it is
Hmm.
giving you the hint also where it is that exception is getting thrown.
Hmm. Hmm.
So this
Got it.
str is my variable declared here where it has value null.
Null.
And
Hmm.
what I am trying to do, I am trying to
Finding
find
the
the
length of a
length of
null.
the null value.
Yes. Hmm.
So it is saying that this
It
is
is
the
a
problem is here. So let me make some string here. Now the exception will be not thrown because
got it.
this string is not null and we are trying to find the length of the string, and
Hmm.
it will execute successfully. So now you
Got
see
it.
it is saying that
Thank
length
you.
of the string is 20 because there is
Hmm.
no null pointer exception. But if I make it null, see, I'm not getting any compile time error because this is not a checked exception. This is unchecked exception. So this will only be caught when I execute the program.
Got it. Got it.
So now it is again this null pointer exception is thrown. So this is all about null pointer exception or runtime exception.
Hmm.
So there is another called array index out of bond exception. That
Got.
is also a null pointer exception. That
Hmm.
is also a null pointer exception, and that is thrown when you are trying to access a value from the array and that
Index which
index
is
is
not there.
not present. So
Got
let's
it.
say here I have a program, I have a
Out of the
numbers array
subset.
and that
Hmm.
has five number of element, and I'm trying to access a index at 10th
Hmm.
index I'm trying to access in the array,
Hmm.
but that index is not available because
Hmm.
the indexes which are available in this array are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hmm. Got it.
Because the index, if you know, 1, 2,
Yes.
3,
0, 1, 2,
4
3, 4,
and 5, because in Java indexes start from 0,
0.
but I
Hmm.
am trying to access a index 10
10, which is
which is
not
not
present.
available or which is not present in the array, so
Hmm.
it will throw array index out of bond exception. Here you say it is saying that index out of bond exception.
Hmm.
So this is another example of
Out of one full
runtime
length 5.
exception. Now
Hmm.
let's, if I make it now index is equal to 3, so now 3
Why?
index is present in that array, so this
Hmm.
exception will be not thrown, and
Got
the
it.
value at 3 is 4.
Hmm.
So it is printing the value at index 3. So this is
Yes.
another example of array index out of bond exception. This is another example of runtime exception.
Hmm. Got it.
Now let's move into the custom exception. So
Okay.
now here you can see the demo of the custom exception. So as I said, right, sometimes we have a requirement where I want to throw some exception which is not a built-in exception present in the Java, but I want to throw for the meaningful message.
Hmm.
So here one of the scenario which I have taken, let's say I have a function validate
Okay.
which validates the age of a person.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I have written like age, if it is less than 18, it should throw invalid age exception.
Okay.
And this invalid age is with respect to my use case, right? I want if
Hmm.
age is less than 18, it should throw invalid age exception which is similar to the condition what I am trying to validate.
Okay. Okay.
Here you can throw runtime exception also,
Okay. Hmm.
but it
That
does
will be
not make
not
sense.
custom. Hmm.
So it does not make sense like what happened, because it will say you that there is a some exception happens and that is runtime. So as a
Ah.
user you will not understand like what happened exactly in the code.
Okay.
So we
Got it.
always have a similar naming convention, so that by looking into the name only you should understand okay what happened. So it is easy to
Hmm.
maintain the code. So let's
Okay.
say if I say runtime exception happens, so we don't know like what happened in the code, right?
Hmm.
Runtime, there are so many exception in under runtime.
Hmm.
So if I say invalid age exception, it will be like very specific. I know like there is a exception handle invalid, and this happened at this part of the code. It is easy to track the code
Errors.
also, error also. It helps you in the handling error. So tomorrow let happens your program is not running properly, by looking into the exception only you can understand that okay, this line of code is causing the issue.
Hmm. Okay.
So that is why we handle this with the specific exception. So custom exception is, helps us to do this.
Okay.
So now here you see custom exception is, I already explained you in the theory. Now we'll see. Here you see I have written a custom exception which is invalid age exception which is extending exception class.
Okay.
And
So
then
this is a class. You have to create a class.
yes, you have to create a class and you have to extend exception or runtime. I'll tell
Okay.
you. So here I have extended exception class, and then this is the constructor.
Public. Okay. It's a constructor.
Constructor to this class, and you are passing a message to the constructor, and
Hmm.
that message is getting passed inside super,
Okay.
and this
Why?
super
Huh.
is Nothing but we use super to call the parent class constructor. So this super
Okay.
will call the parent class exception, which is nothing but exception class.
Okay. Okay.
So whatever message you passed it here, that will be passed to the parent class constructor and that will be printed there.
So parent class constructor will be exception.
Yes. So
Okay.
this is one way to create that exception. So let's see here in my driving code, this validate method is getting called inside try catch because this piece of code is supposed to throw some exception,
Got it.
and I'm handling inside catch block, and the parameter which I'm passing is 16, so age will be 16 and 16 is less than 18, so this will throw
Hmm.
this invalid age exception, and this is the message, and this message will be passed to this constructor here,
Hmm. Hmm.
and this message is passed to the parent class constructor, and that class constructor will print the message. So let me execute this program.
Hmm.
So here you see this message is getting printed that exception is caught and age must be 18 or
Great.
older.
Right on. Hmm.
So that message is coming from here.
Okay. Hmm. Understood.
So this is how we throw a particular exception. This throw keyword which I was talking about, right? So
Huh.
that throw keyword is used here. Till now we have seen
Okay.
only try catch and finally.
Hmm.
And the next keyword is throw here. So fourth keyword is throw.
Throw is like to invoke a exception,
Yes.
like to call it.
Yes. So here you see inside this validate method we are not catching the exception.
Hmm. Hmm.
But this method is thrown from here in the code, but it is caught here in the main method.
Hmm.
So this method, the exception is happening inside validate method, but
Hmm.
it is
Hmm.
caught inside main method.
Hmm.
So we are throwing that exception in the validate method and we are
Hmm.
catching that exception in the main method. So sometimes you might have to throw from one of the method and you have to catch in some other method in real
Hmm.
time
Got it.
scenario.
Got it.
So that is where we use this throw keyword.
Okay. Okay. Then what is throws?
Throws I will come back. So throws here you see, here I am using this throws just for the
Hmm.
demo purpose.
Okay.
So throws is used at the method signature level.
Okay. Okay.
So let's say here this exception is thrown, right?
Hmm.
And we know like this piece of code will throw the invalid age exception, but
Hmm.
we are
Hmm.
not handling it. It is saying that since we know like this piece of code will throw invalid age exception, but we are not handling it here, try catch
Hmm.
block is not here,
Yeah.
so we will declare that the piece of code which is written inside this
Throws that particular.
throws that exception. So we are not handling it here, but we are declaring. Here you can
Okay.
declare exception also. Exception also,
Okay.
that will also work because exception is the parent class.
Okay. Okay.
So it will have all type of exception. Anyway, this in custom exception is also a part of exception class only,
Exception.
right? So
Correct.
there will be no issue. But as I said, we should always handle the specific exception. So you try to handle as you try to handle always exception rather than going for the generic.
Generic. Got it.
So this is the throws keyword we use like this to
Okay. Okay.
declare any exception at the method level.
Okay.
So if you don't use this throws, this will throw a compile time error
Got
because
it.
we are not handling it here, but the piece of code which is written inside this method is expected to throw some exception.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you can always declare that exception in your method.
Hmm. Got it. Understood. So throw and throws have to be almost used together. It has to be there together all the time.
Not necessary. Sometimes you might not. So it depends on the
Okay.
requirement. It's not always. Here, the case which I have taken
Hmm.
is like that.
Okay. Okay. Got
So
it.
this is about throws and throw. Now let's come to back to another thing which I said. So you can also create custom exception with runtime exception class. So rather than having exception, you can also have runtime exception
Random
class also
exception.
here. So that is not a problem at all. It will work as expected. So if you
And runtime exception is also comes under exception. So that
yes,
is like okay. Okay.
so exception is the parent class. You always remember that hierarchy which I showed you, right?
Yes. Yes.
So on the top that is throwable, below throwable we have exception and error, and below exception we have these exceptions like runtime exception, IO exceptions, index auto
Got
bond
it.
exception, null pointer exception. All are like child class of exception class.
Okay.
So exception, if you write any exception, that is the most generic.
Okay.
Any exception happens in your program, that will be handled automatically if you throw or catch exception class.
Got it. Got it. Understood.
So this is all about exception. I think I have discussed everything related to exception now. So
Yes.
I think now you would be clear about exception handling in Java.
Yes. This was actually something new because I wasn't using this very often. And I think while working, this is very much important, right? Because
Yes,
most of the times we create custom exceptions only.
yes. So now I already discussed about all the exceptions, type of exceptions, what is exceptions, how do we handle exceptions, how do we create custom exception and everything.
Hmm.
So now here are some of the best practices which you should always keep it in your mind when you handle the exception, so that it helps developer to handle the exception properly, and it helps to catch your error easily.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you should always catch the specific exceptions, as I already mentioned that earlier also,
Yes.
because it makes your code easier to understand and maintain.
Yes.
And always keep your exception as simple as possible.
Hmm.
Don't try to make too complex,
Hmm.
because if you make too complex, it will make your code difficult. You will find very difficult, you will always find very difficult to debug and maintain your code if the exception handling is too complex. So
Hmm.
try to make as simple as possible, because that is what exception says. If you handle it very easily, it will be easy for you to understand the code, and it will be easy for others to understand also.
Okay. Got it.
And always log exception error with proper message.
Okay.
So why this is needed? Because when you have some problem and you are trying to troubleshoot the issue,
Hmm.
these messages helps us to find that easily. That is why we say that logging is very important in any of the project.
Yes.
Because today, since you are developing, you know, like flow of the code, right? But
Correct.
let's say tomorrow you are not there, somebody else has come in your place, he does not know a single line of code what is written in your project,
Hmm.
and he has to troubleshoot some issue.
Hmm.
Because
Yes.
since he is not aware about the code, for him it is very difficult to troubleshoot if there is no proper logging. If there is a proper logging messages, anybody can go and track that message in the code, right, and will be able to find out the issue.
Hmm.
So it's always better to have a log message proper when you are handling this exception.
Hmm.
And you should always throw your exception appropriate place, like wherever it is needed, there only you throw.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
you don't throw like wherever you are not required, you are just since writing the piece of code, let's throw it. No, you should always think whether this is appropriate to throw from this piece of code or not.
Hmm.
And always use custom exception because it is very specific to your application, and you can always provide the meaningful messages, error message to the client, so that you can have a better code, you can have a better code written with the custom exception,
Hmm.
because with the custom exception the name which will you provide that will be similar to the issue which you are trying to catch, and you will also have a custom error message that you can throw with your own meaningful messages. So
Got it.
these are the few best practices in exception handling, and this is the last slide for today. So I'll just summarize in the end like what I discussed. So I started with exceptions, like what is exceptions in Java. Then I
Hmm.
discussed you about hierarchy of the Java, where I discuss about throwable exception, error, runtime exception. And then I discussed about type of Java exception, where I discussed about check, unchecked, error.
Hmm.
Then I discussed about what are the keywords that are used in exception in order to handle that. So those
Hmm.
keywords are like try, catch,
Hmm.
finally, throw,
Hmm.
throws. Then I discussed about custom exception, like how do we create a custom exception, why do we need custom exception,
Hmm.
and I also gave you the example of each of them. And then in the end I discuss about the best practices of exception handling.
Hmm.
So this is all about for today's session, and if you have any doubt you can just ask me.
Sure. No, I think everything is quite clear.
Okay, so all right then,